Part 4, Chapter 7. Terry Carmichael liked working the graveyard shift. The park was quiet enough this time of year, but at night it was positively dead. Quiet enough so that she could listen to her Japanese language tapes on the cassette player in her truck. Quiet enough to enjoy the kind of serenity that few humans had experienced since the dawn of the industrial age. Quiet enough so that she could think, objectively, about the string of hardcore losers she'd managed to fall for with increasing regularity during the last 10 of her 28 years. There was the love of her life, Eddie, who sat next to her in the romantic English novel class in college and ran off to London to write a romantic English novel. He wrote to her years later to say he was managing a medical supply warehouse in Miami, and could he please come visit her? There was Ari, her martial arts sensei, who was teaching her how to fall after hours and convinced her to stay on the mat. Later, she learned that he was giving horizontal instructions to every young lady in the dojo. More recently, there was her neighbor Joe, who got married and moved. Lewis, who she met at the movies on a particularly lonely Friday night and who turned out to be a schizophrenic. And Mick, the Parks Department official and professional asshole who was going to leave his wife soon and never did. Arigato, she repeated after Yuki said it on the tape. Thank you. It wasn't her fault, she told herself. It very clearly was not. Sumimasen, she said after Yuki. Pardon me. It was men, all of them. Kudasai, she said after Yuki. Please. They courted you till they had you, but then it was on to the next trophy. Or they held on to you until they got what they needed, then they gave you the heave-ho. What was it about men that made them all so superficial? Otto, she repeated. Husband. And desirable, she thought bitterly. Why did she come back to them each time she swore them off? Her radio bleeped. Terry ejected the tape, grabbed the microphone, and tapped the talk switch with her thumb. Yes, Clyde, she said. Terry, have you been through the Needles entrance tonight? Yeah, she said. Come again? That was a no in Japanese. Why do you ask? Mrs. Parker called, Clyde said. Terry rolled her big blue eyes. Oh God, what is it this time? UFO abduction or ritual human sacrifice? Neither. She said she saw a bunch of trucks going through the Needles entrance an hour ago and thought they looked suspicious. Clyde, what does a suspicious truck look like? She asked. Was there a mask on the window? Were werewolves driving? Come on, Terry. Sorry, Clyde, she said, but this is the same woman who chopped off one of her own fingers because she said it turned on her. It was one of the evil dead. Yeah, she's a nutburger, Clyde agreed. Thing is, she said one of the trucks was ours and described it right. I've got to have it checked, and you're the only one out. Terry sighed. Maybe Bigfoot got a driver's license. Terry. Yeah, she said. Don't worry, I'll look into it, but Clyde... What? If she comes at me with a stake and hammer, like she did the time she thought I was Dracula's niece, you're dead meat. Hey, said Clyde, you're the one who said you wanted the graveyard shift this month. Terry said, that was only so you'd stop asking me out. I'll get over there and I'll let you know what I find. Returning the microphone to its hook, Terry sighed more deeply than before, pushed the tape back in, and swung the truck around. Hi, she said after Yuki. Yes. Shimbun, newspaper. Hotaru, hotel. Parker-san, pain in the butt. Chapter 8. Deakins listened with satisfaction as Wilkins' crewman reported that he'd lost the B-3. Keep hunting, Wilkins said, less gung-ho than before. They're gonna have to come up for air sooner or later. The colonel was silent for a moment, then said, Deke, if you're listening, I don't know what you just pulled out there, but you will be mine. Oh, yes. Deakins smiled. Oh, no, I won't, he thought as he looked at the radar data on one of the screens. Okay, Hale, we're under their eyes and ears. Proceed to primary target. Hale nodded. Descending to 200. Deakins' eyes were on the topographic screen. Ridge coming up in 6 seconds. Got it, said Hale. His left hand moved above a yellow button. You know, these exercises are fantastic. I mean, when that day finally comes and we've got to go to war against Utah, man, we're really gonna kick ass. Deakins continued to watch the topographic display as Hale pushed the button to engage the autopilot. An almost impenetrable steadying occurred throughout the aircraft, reminiscent of a car going over to cruise control. Hale released the stick and glanced out the forward windscreen. The stars were bright, the moon sharp-edged. Nicely done, said Deakins. You're getting to be as good as me. He looked at Hale. You really love this shit, don't you? Hale took a deep breath. Like you love boxing. Remember when we were out on the lake last week and you asked me why I became a pilot? All I remember is eating the big, juicy bass I caught while you sucked on the bones of the poor, scrawny little thing that you hauled in. Hale's eyes had a dreamy softness. It was as if he hadn't heard Deakins' response. I said I became an Air Force pilot because where else can you fly a $2 billion plane 800 miles an hour? Do it so low to the ground that you can reach down and goose the ladies. And that's true. But it's also for this. Hale extended both hands towards the window as though they held an offering. I mean, Hale said, when we're up here I feel, well, closer somehow. His hands dropped to his knees. Shit, I don't know how to put it. I'm not even sure exactly what it is I'm trying to say. Deakins said, You feel closer to God. Is that it? Maybe. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, does it? Since God is supposed to be everywhere. What should it matter if you're in the clouds at Mach something or lying in a grass hut in Sumatra? It shouldn't matter, Deakins agreed. So why do I feel like this is a kind of religious experience? Because it is, my friend. Hale looked at him, interested. You being serious? Yeah, Deakins went on. With the payload we're carrying, we are God. Hale's interest became dismay. What the hell are you talking about? The Old Testament, Deakins said. Noah's flood, Sodom and Gomorrah, the golden calf. We're the God who smiteth. Hale shook his head. Jesus, Deke. I was thinking of something a little more pious. Ooh, we can't have any of that naughty fighting, right, Pard? Hale's mood soured even more. Jesus, Deke, don't get back on that kick. Why not? You don't find what you're saying even a little hypocritical? What? That you come on like this big pacifist. Deakins said. But you get your jollies being part of a fighting force. The US military doesn't have a chip on its shoulder, Hale said. They want peace. I want peace. We were made for each other. A marriage made in heaven, Deke said. Obviously by God himself. Yeah, Hale said. I like to think so. Which means you're in this for the long haul, Deakins said. Till death do you part. Abso-fucking-lutely, Hale said. Don't tell me you're not. I don't know. A guy with your natural ability to offend people, Deakins said. You said so yourself. No, Hale said. I mean to fly. You know your body, man. I feel like that in the ring. When you're in here, your body becomes part of the plane. You are the machine. Nice of you to notice, Deakins said. But I'm coming up on 20 years, and I'm thinking that maybe you're right. Maybe I never had the right attitude for this company. Like you said, I should be a colonel by now. Hey, Deke, we were just shooting the shit, that's all. Anyway, don't talk like it's too late. It isn't. You give a little, they'll give a little. No, Deakins said. I'll never be a colonel. Shit lumps like Boone make general. Boone's okay, said Hale. Come on. A thought goes through his head, it's been on the shortest trip in North America. Deakins looked out the windscreen. 20 years of watching idiots climb past you takes its toll. Fact is, I'm thinking about cashing out. No way, Hale said emphatically. You'd miss it before you even left. I don't know about that, Deakins said. Flying doesn't mean as much to me as it does to you. Not the flying, Hale said. Carrying nukes. To me, they're just cargo. But you get off on having that power. You just said it Hold it, Deakins barked. He held up an index finger as he looked down at his screen. He looked out the window and frowned. What is it? Hale asked. Take a look out your side. I think our terrain following is off. Shouldn't starboard ridge be on our port? Hale was all business now. He looked. It seems okay to me, he said. While Hale looked, Deakins slipped off his right-hand glove and reached into his flight suit. Hale turned back. His gaze went from Deakins' narrowed eyes to a thin cylinder he was pulling from his suit. Jesus, Deke, you can't smoke in... Hale bit off the rest of the sentence as Deakins pointed the cylinder at Hale's forehead. It wasn't a cigarette, but the slender barrel of a Walther P-38. Don't budge, Deakins said flatly. What do you mean? Hale said. Deakins said quietly, almost sadly. I've decided, actually, to cash out now. Deke, you can't mean this. Come on, man. What the hell kind of joke is this? No joke, Deakins said. I'm sorry, partner. As Deakins' finger closed on the trigger, Hale threw his right arm forward. He caught the outside of Deakins' wrist, driving the Major's forearm across his face as the gun discharged. The bullet drilled a clean path through the crown of Hale's helmet and punched through the window, leaving a whistling hole and a web-like design in its wake. Deakins' finger was still on the trigger, and the gun continued to fire, smashing holes in the ceiling and the wall of the cockpit. "Deke, it's me!" Hale screamed. "What's going on?" Deakins didn't answer. He stopped firing, brought his left hand around, and fought to aim the gun back at Hale. Greater strength and deeper desire enabled Deakins to swing the barrel towards Hale. He squeezed off another round, which ripped through the top of Hale's belt harness, causing the shoulder strap to snap. The bullet hit a buckle and bounced off. Free of his harness, Hale suddenly yelled and threw his body weight into his arms, slamming the gun hard against the front of Deakins' helmet. The Major yowled, but despite the ringing pain in his forehead, he kept his grip on the gun and his eyes on the captain. Then, beyond Hale, Deakins saw the dark sky grow darker, the stars disappear from the bottom up. They were banking towards a cliff. Deakins roared inarticulately, then wrestled his gun hand free and grabbed the control stick with his left hand. He yanked hard to the right, swinging the bomber away from the cliff and into a sweeping right turn. The rapid turn threw Hale across the throttle and against Deakins. His back against the side of the cockpit, Deakins was able to throw Hale off. And then Deakins saw it. The brilliant red laser light shot through the sky like blood from a paper cut, fine and straight. Deakins took advantage of Hale's momentary imbalance to pull off his left-hand glove with his teeth and use his index and middle finger to push the armaments control button 1, 2, right. When he pushed the buttons, Deakins automatically activated a computer program that gave the pilot a graphic indication of what was happening in the bomb bay. The cartoon-like animation showed the bomb racks rotating. The picture stopped moving when the two B-83s, glowing red, were locked in the bottom spot, the release position. "You bastard!" Hale screamed and dove for him again. Deakins brought the gun around, though not before Hale was on top of him. Deakins tried to angle the gun at his adversary's back, but his own tight harness made that impossible. "You're freaking crazy!" Hale snarled in his face as he grabbed the sides of Deakins' helmet. With his free hand, Deakins tried to stop him. Hale yanked the helmet off and slammed it hard into his opponent's face. "You're crazy! You hear me?" Deakins did, but he didn't care what Hale thought or said. Momentarily dazed, he'd lost the gun. As he felt for it in the dark, he found the plane's compact fire extinguisher instead. It came free with a tug. Roaring again, Deakins smashed the metal cylinder into Hale's cheekbone and nose. Blood exploded from the captain's left nostril, and he fell back, groggy, as the plane flew closer to the laser beam. Deakins struggled to fight down his rage. ETA was in less than half a minute. There was no more time for this, and no time to find the gun. There was only one thing to do. Not foolproof by a long shot, but with the busted shoulder strap, it was a damn good bet. Reaching across the throttle, Deakins clicked the ejection control button on Hale's seat from auto to manual. Then he slid his hand beside the seat and wrapped his fingers around the soft rubber of the ejection handle. "Sorry, pal," Deakins said, licking blood from his lip where the helmet had struck it. His eyes half shut, Hale made a vain, valiant lunge for the handle as Deakins pulled it. There was a loud pop, a hiss, and the ejection hatch blew open. At the same time, Hale's head snapped back hard, and acrid smoke billowed through the cockpit like flattened cotton balls as the seat rose through the opening, carrying Hale with it. As the red laser beam slashed through the windows, tinting the smoke ruby as it was sucked out the opening, Deakins batted away wind-whipped printouts and coffee cups and reached for the button marked Release. The fist of cold air slammed down on Hale, reviving him, and at the same time making it difficult for him to breathe. The B-3 was already hundreds of feet above and beyond him, and vanishing rapidly. The chair was rocking wildly from side to side, or was it him? Hale wondered. He had been through countless ejection drills, and even as the parachute splashed open above him, he knew at once that something was wrong. The shoulder harness. He remembered it had snapped. All that was holding him to the seat was the waist buckle, which he never wore tight because it made him want to pee. An instant before the parachute was fully deployed, Hale flung his arms across his chest, felt desperately in the dark for the remnants of the harness, and wrapped his freezing fingers around them before the chute jerked his seat violently. The seatbelt dug hard into his waist as he was thrown up against it, but he held on as the chair slowed, descending almost lazily now, with gentle, pendulum-like swings. The air was cold on his bloody face, and the sweat under his flight suit cooled, then chilled rapidly. But Hale wasn't thinking about his discomfort or what the Major might have in mind. All he could think about was that his friend, or someone he'd believed was his friend, had betrayed him. In rapid succession, Deke had tried to put a hole in his forehead and boot him out the door of a speeding bomber. As difficult as it was to remain conscious, it was tougher to forget what had just happened and let himself pass out. Hale compromised by allowing himself to sob briefly from the shock, after which he blinked away his tears and looked down, trying to make out, in the dark, the shape of any trees or rivers he might be in danger of hitting.